Hello, my name is Holland Timmons, otherwise known on the internet as the Connoisseur, and today we'll be taking a hard look at a very serious or non-serious discussion, depending on who you ask. Can games be considered art? Now, just so you know, I used to consider myself a very hardcore gamer for very much of my life. I cannot call myself a gamer anymore, not due to any political stance, but because I've been so busy, preoccupied by my job, I just haven't had the time to put in the serious hours to consider myself a gamer anymore. Otherwise, I'd be a gamer right now. I'd be playing games and everything, but no, I just don't have the time anymore because I'm working too much. No time to play the games, can't be called a gamer anymore, but I can still talk about them, at least what I've played. When I was three or four, I had this electronic toy called the Geo Safari. It was this, again, it was an electronic toy with a set number of games in it. And I played the games and stuff, but ultimately I got bored of all the games. So I just began programming my own games into the machine and had fun that way. And that's a lot like computer games, isn't it? Where you have these games and you play them, and ultimately some people will get bored of the games and start programming their own. Well, what's the difference between a game as a work of art and being an electronic toy like a Geo Safari? I guess that's what we're here to discuss. And a lot of people will say, well, games are art, they're not just electronic toys. There's a lot of artwork that goes into them. I know, there's concept art, there's character designs, there's modeling, there's music, there's storyline. But, you know, there's a difference between me drawing a picture of Donald Duck and an actual Carl Barks adventure of Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge. And it's like, what are you talking about, Duck comics? Well, it took a long time for comics to be considered art as well. And same thing with film. And you know, every time a new art form emerges, it takes growing pains for it to be considered art. Just because video games have a lot of artistic skill required doesn't mean that they're automatically art because of it. I've played a lot of games, and they're all a lot of fun. All the games I've played were a lot of fun. But how many could be considered a work of art? Well, in my opinion, out of all the games I've played, only 2 can be considered works of art. And the rest are just either derivatives or not fully masterpieces. You know, what games am I talking about? Well, the first one is a fairly popular one. It's from the 90s. It was the first game to really capture all of the different elements, from the music, to the story, to the dialogue, to the characters, everything about it. The sum of its parts created a whole which was a masterpiece, and that is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I have it for the 3DS now. Actually, it has cool stuff like lightning, which I don't think was in the original game before. I could be wrong. That game is a piece of art, man. Everything about it just flows from the beginning all the way to the ending. It was the first game to actually achieve what I consider to be an actual piece of art. And, you know, it just had all the elements of all the artistic elements just came together, it gelled, and created a masterpiece of artwork. And I haven't seen that in a long time. In fact, I hadn't seen it until the next game I'm going to talk about, which is the second game I would consider to be a masterpiece of artistry, and that would be Red Dead Redemption, sequel to Red Dead Revolver. I have this, and as it says, nothing less than the next step for the open world genre. Can't believe I'm quoting IGN there, but yeah, there it is. That game is a Western, and everything about it is just perfection. It's the music, the characters, the dialogue, the gameplay, the story, everything. It's a masterpiece, and I've played a lot of games. Obviously, I haven't played everything, but I doubt anybody can. If you have played everything, please consider getting a life. But there are a lot of games out there that are fun, but I don't know how many people have played games that they consider to be art. I know there are a lot of people that have played games that they consider to be fun, but again, the only two games I've played that I can consider to be works of art, much less masterpieces, are Ocarina of Time and Red Dead Redemption. I actually wrote an article for a gaming journalism website, if you can call gaming journalism, but I wrote an article about Red Dead Redemption, and it wasn't very good, at least in my eyes. I could have done much better, but this was during the height of Anita Sarkeesian, SJWs, and Gamergate, and I spent just as much time defending the game from those so-called feminazi SJWs as I was talking about the game's storyline. I hope nobody ever finds that article because it just sucked. But the game was awesome, and I had fun playing the game again. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the thing about Red Dead Redemption is it's my second favorite Western of all time, right after The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It is a Western. It's one of the best Westerns I've ever seen, and it's a friggin' video game. So, I will give props to Rockstar for doing that. They created a Western masterpiece. And I'll give props to Nintendo and Shigeru Miyamoto for creating Ocarina of Time. These games are the baby steps of the art form, in my opinion. They're separated far apart, but they're baby steps for a new art form in terms of video games. It took a while for film to grow into an art form. It took a while for comic books. Even art turned from cave paintings all the way to masterpieces by Leonardo da Vinci and Van Gogh. It just takes a while. And, well, I think the potential is there for games to become a pure art form like we take for granted with, well, most movies. They can be critically dissected and stuff. I just feel like right now, for the most part, all we're getting are interactive toys like the Geo Safari. If you want to thumbs down the video, that's fine, but that's my opinion. I think we have a ways to go before we really start getting pieces of art most of the time with video games like we do with, other art forms. Video games are a very young art form, and there are bound to be a few missteps or falls, but I think video games will get there. So yes, I do believe video games are art, but mainly I think they're suffering a setback due to programmers releasing unfinished or broken games, glitchy games, DLC, microtransactions. It's becoming less about the art and more about the money, and that's a huge detriment to the art form, or at least for it to be considered an art form. I hope there are some programmers out there that are willing to listen to me in terms of this. I do hope to one day be a gamer again, to have the free time to put in enough hours that I can consider myself a hardcore gamer again. But due to me working, I can't consider myself a hardcore gamer. You know, maybe there are games out there that are starting to become works of art again, but in my experience out of all the games I've played throughout my lifetime, let's know those two. So are games art? They can be. They definitely can be. And I hope one day they will be. I hope they will be a mainstream art form. But for the most part, all we're getting are broken geo-safaris, with every once in a while a Legend of Zelda or a Red Dead Redemption. Okay, this is Holland Timmons, also known as the Connoisseur on the internet. I'm working on my own art. I will see you guys later. If you want to comment on any games you would consider to be art that I haven't mentioned, I would love to discuss things about this. I'd love to discuss games. Do you consider games to be art? Do you not? What games do you consider to be art? Again, please comment below. If you can, like, share, subscribe, whatever. Yeah. And whatever you do, do not read that article by me. It sucks.